Thanks, Max. And thank you all for joining me on this discussion. And the purpose of this presentation is to talk about how organizations within the maritime industry are leveraging technology to increase the communication, transparency, and visibility throughout the industry. I would also like to say that although I will be referring to a few companies in this presentation, I am unbiased and I am just simply providing you with a few examples as to what is currently being developed in the industry, as well as some of the things on the roadmap for these organizations. So a little bit about myself. I am a professor of project and supply chain management at Penn State University. I have created a number of supply chain management, operations management, and logistics courses for a number of institutions in the United States and in Germany. And I also am a board member of the International Supply Chain Education Alliance. I would also like to note that we are currently in the process of developing a sustainable supply chain professional certification. And if you are interested in hearing more about that, please reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I will provide you with that information at the end of this presentation. So the maritime industry has been an often overlooked industry, but operations within this industry has quadrupled over the last 4 decades. It has also been noted that this number is projected to increase tenfold by 2050. As I perform a lot of research for the Sustainability Institute at Penn State, I bring in the industry aspects to the Institute, and I continue to refer and provide additional research into the maritime industry, given that it's the most sustainable method of transportation, so that we can provide additional insight into how we can continuously improve on this particular industry. It's also important to note that many have said that we as a global population suffer from what some refer to as sea blindness, in that we don't see the sea as a place of industry or a place of work. I think that it's important to note that 90% of the world's product gets to us from the maritime industry. If you look at this caption here, there are over 500, on an annual basis, there are over 500 million events that are created, and 1.5 a day within this industry. There are over 4 million documents that are published annually, and we're going to get to that shortly. There are over 20 million containers tracked. We're going to get to that as well. And then there's a number of different participants that are participating within this particular industry and trade. So in order to address the communication, in order to address the transparency, in order to address the automation, there is one organization called Gnosis Freight that I have been researching. I've actually spoke with Gnosis Freight to get a deeper dive into their solution, just to ensure that it's not smoke and mirrors on their website. And what they showed me is they have a tool which they refer to as the automation suite, where they provide additional visibility. They provide real-time simulations in a number of things, from booking, from scheduling, from tracking shipments, all within one platform. And they can also modify and customize a organization solution based on their requirements. So this screen here is just one example of the booking tool they use. And again, I will say that that's one piece of their automation suite. They also, which is a big gap within the industry itself overall, is the issue of container tracking. And they are using a number of different tools that they are bringing into their solution to track, for an organization to track their containers in real time, because traditionally within the maritime industry, container tracking was through the method of text messages, through the method of WhatsApp, through the method of phone calls, through the method of emails, and they're bringing that within one platform. Also, I would say one of the most important pieces is that global map view, where they can see at any given time where a particular shipment is. Now, that, again, this was another gap within the industry. And also, it's important to note that they are integrating machine learning into their tools, so they can bring in that automation. They can bring in these simulations, so that you can have more well-informed data, more well-informed tools to make those decisions within the ocean freight industry. And also, so within Gnosis Freight says that they cater to small, medium, and large organizations. And in the next few slides, you will see why I am referring to that. I would say one of the largest announcements within the industry was the collaboration with IBM and Maersk to create IBM TradeLens. Although many of you have heard of Maersk, to put it into perspective of how large this organization is within the logistics industry, revenue-wise, Maersk is comparable to Microsoft in terms of revenue. So Maersk is a very large player within the logistics industry, and they have collaborated with IBM to create a platform to increase the trust, to increase the visibility using tools such as blockchain. So they have created a digital platform where they collect all of this data from a number of organizations to solve the issue of this paperwork, those millions of documents that we've seen in a prior slide. They put transactions on the blockchain so that there's a consensus-based model, so that we can say, okay, the bill of lading, the information on that bill of lading is indeed valid. They're putting transactions on the blockchain, so there's visibility within a permissioned blockchain. So this IBM TradeLens platform is, one, increasing the visibility. Two, increasing the transparency of these transactions, so we can see what is actually within those shipments, because that's important. It's important to note that there's only about 2 to 10% of containers that are physically inspected. So that opens the door for a lot of unethical practices. And if we have this transparency, such as a solution that TradeLens provides, now we can mitigate the risks that we sometimes see within the logistics industry. So just to give you even more detail on this TradeLens solution, is that you have increased networks, right? And one thing too, if you're unaware of the capabilities of blockchain, the larger the blockchain network becomes, the more secure it becomes. I know that a lot of people believe that blockchain is Bitcoin, but blockchain is the technology in which Bitcoin is built upon. Blockchain is a technology that increases the transparency and increases the security of the transactions of those players within the industry. And that's why this solution is vital to the maritime industry. It could be vital to the trucking industry. It's vital to the airline industry, because now we see what is actually within those shipments. Okay, so and the IBM Trade Lens is one thing. It's growing in popularity within the industry, within the shipping industry itself, within the maritime industry itself, I should say, and it's only going to get larger. Now, I mentioned Gnosis Freight caters to small, medium, and large organizations, because IBM Trade Lens initially, because we're very early on within this IBM Trade Lens project, and IBM Trade Lens is primarily catering to, and this is my opinion, and based on what I've seen, based on who I've spoke, even the individuals I spoke with within the industry, they are primarily catered to those large organizations, and so as this solution begins to scale, begins to get larger, then I believe that these small and medium enterprises may have a use case to use IBM Trade Lens. Now, in terms of shipping documentation for small and medium organizations, IBM Trade Lens would be a phenomenal fit, right? So, and we'll get to the maturity later at the end, toward the end of this discussion. But it begins on it's based on what solutions are you looking for your particular organization. So within the maritime industry, there has been a issue in terms of seafarers. There are currently 1.6 million seafarers globally, and 20% of those seafarers come from the Philippines, with China producing the second highest number of seafarers, followed by Indonesia. Now, with research showing that the majority of seafarers on these ships are typically tired, typically exhausted, typically malnourished, that's a problem of how do we evaluate, how do we ensure the safety of these individuals. One thing that we are working on from an academic perspective is we have partnered with Zeus Logics, and Zeus Logics is a provider that provides e-bills of lading solutions for the maritime industry. And we started working on a use case. And one of my students, Tom O'Toole, is developing a blockchain application. So he's completing his master's in global business and blockchain technology. And his master's project, his master's thesis, is a comparative study of the technological maturity and readiness of companies in China, in the Philippines, Indonesia, as well as Burma, to see how they can assess the health of these seafarers. So what he's proposing is that we create smart contracts, and these smart contracts use sensors that feed data into these smart contracts, where they show the health, the temperature, the weights of these seafarers. And now we can use machine learning, we can use artificial intelligence to alert individuals if there is a potential issue on these ships. We did have the argument of you're not going to have seafarers and individuals on a ship going around and assessing the health of every single seafarer, but you have to understand that there's not that many seafarers on these large ships. There's about 15 to 20 different 15 or 20 seafarers on a particular ship at a given time. So I don't foresee this being an issue. And just as these seafarers clock in for the day, they can do a quick scan, they can do a quick hop on the scale, and that information again uses sensors, and it gets fed into the blockchain solution, the ERP solution, where that information is tracked, and then we can trigger alerts if there's an issue. So that's one thing we're doing from an academic perspective, from a research perspective, to counter the potential risk, the issues that we see within the maritime industry. So with all of these technological advancements in the industry, one of the common questions I receive is, where do we start? And the first place we would start is, we have to assess what your current state maturity is from an organizational perspective, from a process perspective, from a people perspective, and from a technology perspective. Okay. Now we hear, whenever we talk about maturity, you hear, people, process, and technology. I add another parameter, another variable to that in terms of your data. Because I would say that a lot of people put data within that technology piece, but the data is separate because it is very specific. And sometimes an organization will have that technological infrastructure in place, but their data is not accurate. But they need to cleanse their data. So you have what we refer to as a maturity level. So from an operations perspective, from an organizational perspective, are we ready to implement blockchain? Are we ready to implement machine learning? Are we ready to implement artificial intelligence? Okay. If not, then we can look at that Gnosis Freight, where it's a SaaS model. It's a software as a service model, where there's no technology we have to set up. There's no infrastructure we have to set up within our organizations. It's essentially plug and play. We work with these vendors. It doesn't have to be Gnosis Freight. We work with those organizations. We modify the application as we need to, and we implement the solution. Now, that leads me into the people aspect. So let's just say that, okay, we're using a SaaS model, but are the people ready to use that particular SaaS model? So that's another thing that you have to assess. And also the processes. Do we have the processes in place to utilize these solutions? Just because it can be the greatest solution in the world, but if you do not have the people to adopt that solution, if you do not have the structured process to implement for this solution, the solution is deemed from failure from the start. And I would say most importantly, the data. Do we have, if with a software as a service solution such as that Gnosis, such as Zeus Logix, we have the data coming in from external sources. But depending upon the level of data you need internally, you need to assess your data. So you have those different parameters, and then you have different maturity levels. So if we look at the intra-company maturity, that's what is the maturity within our four walls. Okay. The intercompany maturity is what is maturity outside of our four walls. What is the maturity within our business partners, within our suppliers, within our customers? Okay. Now you have to perform that assessment whenever you're talking about a digital transformation such as this. But once you do that current state, then you identify, okay, what does the future state look like? Okay. So as we wrap up, I would say the calls to action is going to be, understand the term augmented intelligence. Artificial intelligence, I normally say is the term that's appealing to the industry. That's the term that sells. But in reality, we're talking about augmented intelligence. We are using these tools as just that. They are just tools. They do not make the decisions for us. We review that data and we make the decisions. That's where that term, that augmented intelligence, comes from. We want to assess our organization's maturity. Again, going back to that maturity model to see where we're at from a people, process, and technology and data perspective. We want to get buy-in internally, beginning with our leadership and bring it down to the end users, as well as our external stakeholders with our business partners and our customers. And then finally, get back to basics with the data. So thank you for your time, and I can be reached on LinkedIn as well as on via email at jlg566@psu.edu. Thank you for your time, and have a great day, have a great night, have a great evening.